Let's look at what we have here. So on this problem, we're going to solve for theta in the following. So we are given 2 sine theta plus 1 is equal to 1.28. Okay, so now when you solve for trig, make sure that whatever trig ratio you have on the equation, you isolate it. So when I say isolate, meaning that we need to get rid of everything in the left hand side so that we can only be left with the sine theta. So the 1 will move to the other side and it will be minus 1. So we'll be left with 2 the sine theta this side. We equate this to 1.28, we minus 1. So when you say 1.28 on your calculator, minus 1, you'll get this to be 0.28. So this side we still have the 2 sine theta. Remember, the aim is to get rid of everything this side so that we can only have what? The sine of theta. So therefore my sine theta is equal to, we take the 0.28, you divide it by 2. So this when we say 0.28, this guy here gives us what? This gives us 0.14. So this tells you that we can equate the sine of theta to 0.14. So now the last part is to find theta. So on your calculator, you need to press shift, then you press sine, then after pressing sine, it will allow you to put in your number. Then you're going to put your 0.14. So now remember the steps. What are the steps? First thing first, shift on your calculator, then you press sine, then you press the 0.4. So this tells you that we are looking for the shift inverse, the sine inverse. We are looking for the sine inverse. So now when you press this, this will give you an answer of what? 8.05 degrees. So your theta is equal to that. But to put this in simple terms, theta is equal to the sine inverse of that angle. So how do we punch the sine inverse of that? We say shift sine of 0.4, then you'll have your final answer. You're going to have your final answer as 8.05. And this is how you solve the trig equations. And we solve this one. I have 3 the cos of 2 theta minus 14, and this is equated to 1.5. So now we need to do what? We need to solve for theta. Remember, the aim is to isolate the cos of the angle on one side. So to do that, I'll divide both sides by 3 first. Then this side, the 3 cancels. We are left with the cos of that angle, 2 theta minus 14 degrees, which is equated to 1.5 over 3. So now this is what I have, but remember the 1.5 over 3, I can write it as a decimal form. So this will be 2 theta minus 14 degrees. This is equals to 1.5 over 3, that gives me 0.5. Right. So now what you're going to do, this is, you just have to leave the angle for now. Whatever that you have inside the bracket, you're going to leave it, or you can just let that to be theta and say this is the cos of theta. It equals to okay, let's not say theta, because if we say theta, someone might be confused. Let's let whatever that is inside the brackets, let's let it maybe x, and say the cos of x is equal to 0.5. So now the aim is to solve for what? For x. Remember, how do we solve for x? On your calculator, shift, then you're going to say the cos, then you put 0.5, shift, you punch shift, then you say cos 0.5. So you'll get that your x is equals to, when you put that on the calculator, you get x to be 60 degrees. Right. So now remember, x is, what is x equals to? X is 2 theta minus 14. So where does x, I can put 2 theta minus 14 degrees. This is equated to 60. Now the aim is to solve for theta. The question said solve for theta. So if we can go back up, solve for theta in the following. Right. So to solve for theta now, I need to take the 14 to the other side and the sign will change. What do we have when we take it to the other side? So we can write this and say 2 theta minus 14, it's equals to 60 degrees. The 14 goes to the other side to be positive. This is 2 theta, it's equals to 60 degrees. We add 14 degrees, and this gives us 74. Divide both sides by 2 to make theta subject of the formula. So when you say 74 divided by 2, that's 37. And 37, ladies and gents, that's your final answer. And that's it for this problem. This is how you isolate theta. How can we work on this one? So I have 0.5 multiplied by the tan of 3 theta plus 5 degrees is equal to 30. Remember the first thing that you need to do. You divide by 0.5. You divide by 0.5 because now we are trying to solve for theta. So these two guys cancels, and then what do we have on the left hand side? We are left with the tan of 3 theta plus 5 degrees, and this is equated to, on your calculator you need to say 3 over 0.5. It's like saying 3 over half, which is 6. This gives us 6, right? This is not an angle, so that gives us a 6. Remember, you can just leave whatever that you have inside the bracket and maybe say this guy here, I'm gonna leave you and say you are my x. So I can write this to be the tan of x, it's equals to 6. Then we need to first solve for that x. How do we solve for x? We can say that to solve for x, you say on your calculator shift, then you say tan, then you put that 6. It's like saying we're trying to write this as x, it's equals to the tan inverse of 6. So how do we punch this on the calculator? You say shift, you punch shift, then tan, then you put 6. So when you punch this, you're going to have something like that. So now you're going to put, when you punch an equal sign, you'll get the value of x. So this will tell us that the value of x, when we say shift tan, it gives us 80.54. So this is equals to 80.54. So now remember, my x is what? 80.54. So if x is 80.54 degrees, what is the next step? The next step is to take this x. We know that the x is what we have inside the bracket. So this will be 3 theta plus 5, equate that to 80.54. Now solve for x theta. The 5 goes to the other side to be negative. So this will be 3 theta is equals to 80.54 minus, what are we minusing? 5 degrees. So we minus 5, and 3 theta is equals to 75.54. Divide both sides by 3 to make theta subject of the formula. Therefore, what is your angle theta equals to? So when you punch this on the calculator, this gives us 25.18. And that's it for this lesson. This is how you simplify trig equations. So if this is your first time watching our lessons, please make sure that you hit that subscription button so that you can get a notification when we upload to the next lesson.